Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. You, you're a divine creation, a divine marvel, a child of God. As I say that, I go back in times to where people would say things like that to me, and I really didn't feel like a divine creation or a divine marvel. And it's a very deep thing to really sit with that. According to Bruno Groening's teaching, and many wisdom teachings and sages from around the world have said that our innermost essence is pure, is divine. And Bruno affirmed this, very firmly affirmed this. No matter how bad a person behaved, their essence was good. And so when I think back to times of deep suffering, times where I didn't feel good, times before I was convinced that Bruno was correct, or even times since I've become convinced that that's true, but I didn't feel it. That can be a tricky thing to navigate. And what I've realized is that the spiritual path and spiritual truth can be a tricky thing to navigate because it calls for discernment. Because if we're not feeling well, we don't want to sort of dissociate and say, well, oh, I'm a divine creation. I'm a divine, or, if we're behaving really badly, like in a moment where let's say I do something bad, not harmonious, and I feel some regret about it, which I do every day. I do something small, sometimes medium, on the bad days, a little bigger, that I feel regret about. And so it's very easy to misuse a spiritual teaching. I've done it, and I've seen many other people do it, where I do something that's just not harmonious. I feel not good about it. And then I misuse a spiritual teaching. Like I say, oh, I'm going to give that bad feeling away. Or, oh, I'm a divine creation. I'm a divine marvel. I'm a child of God. When in fact, feeling that remorse and being aware of it is actually what's needed in that moment. And Bruno said that one of the beautiful things about having a body is that it lets you, I can't remember his exact words, but the essence is you can feel when something doesn't feel right. And so, no, we're not meant to get bogged down in negative feelings, but feelings can be a kind of guidance. And here, discernment is needed. And of course, it varies from situation to situation. But the hypothetical I just presented of doing something harmful, feeling remorse, and then sort of trying to get rid of that remorse. Well, that remorse is actually a message. Sometimes someone says something and it just doesn't feel right. Maybe someone does a behavior and it just doesn't feel right. Well, we don't want to get stuck in resentment. I don't want to get stuck in resentment, but I also don't want to ignore the signals I'm receiving. Sometimes I get the signal without a negative feeling of like, oh, that's not right. I don't want to connect with that or associate with that. Sometimes it's more of a visceral feeling. And so the name of the game is discernment, as Bruno taught, to listen deep within ourselves. So one thing that's really on my mind and heart right now and connected to everything I just said is the gift of challenges. So the long and short of it is my experience of life, and pretty much everyone I've talked to has said that this is their experience of life, is that life has bumps. Sometimes those bumps are very minor, where it's just, oh, that didn't feel good, no big deal. Sometimes those bumps are huge. Right now, I'm moving through a very huge bump, a very thing that I'm experiencing is very challenging, very stressful. But thanks to grace of a higher power and the help of Bruno and friends. Bruno never said he was the only spiritual helper. I've bumped into people who sadly kind of have turned Bruno kind of into a religion of like, Bruno is the only one who can help. When in fact he said the exact opposite. He said that God always has a helper here on this earth to help mitigate and distribute the divine energy. But through grace, through the help of Bruno and my friends, my spiritual helpers, and applying these teachings today, I'm facing these challenges as if they are an opportunity. I say as if, but it actually is an opportunity. Bruno said only things that serve as a lesson are allowed to happen. And I've been sharing this teaching for years and striving and struggling to apply it. And today I'm really living it. And it feels so good to have a situation that looks like a huge mess, that looks like a disaster, and say, oh, this is a gift from God. It doesn't feel like it, but this is an absolute opportunity to learn and grow. Now, as I do that, I don't want to let go of discernment. I don't want to let go of, well, this is what this in this situation. Here's what I did that was off. Here's what that other person did that was off. I don't want to lose discernment while holding to a spiritual truth that everything that happens is a lesson and ultimately is a blessing and ultimately is for us. And sometimes the lesson is to say no, to learn to say no. As someone who tries to be kind and nice and loving, saying no when someone asks me for something, or saying no to behavior that doesn't feel right or is disrespectful, it's not the easiest thing for me. So that's my learning. That's part of my learning. Whereas for some people, they're very sort of too closed and they need to learn how to say yes and learn how to open up a little more. So what if Bruno Groening is correct? What if everything that occurs is a lesson and is guided by God? That doesn't mean it's God's first choice. As Bruno said, God allows free will. And with that free will, we human beings, and I'm one of them, have done many things that I don't think bring God a lot of joy. Meaning times where I've taken in what Bruno called bosse, which translates as nastiness, viciousness, or evil, where I've taken in the energy of bosse and then done bosse. As Bruno said, we become entrapped by it. So God gives us free will, and I and all of us misuse it, and we do harmful things. So when someone does something harmful to me, should I just say, oh, that's God's will, okay? Or, oh, this is a gift from God, this is a lesson, okay? I don't think so. I think I need to do that 50%. Say, okay, what's happening is a gift from God and is a lesson, and how do I respond? This is where discernment is so key, because it's very easy to misuse spiritual teachings as to kind of a phrase people use is spiritual bypass. For example, if someone is repetitively treating me badly and I say, oh, this is a lesson, and so I just don't say anything or do anything and take the abuse, I would say that is bad. That if I were to do that, and I've done that, I'm speaking about something I've done. If I were to do that, I, in those instances, was misusing a spiritual truth. And here's where it's my feeling that the spiritual path becomes very individualized and very also moment by moment. In each moment, the question is, what would move this situation forward? What would create more harmony? In old school religious language, what is God's will in this situation? Because I can misuse a spiritual teaching and say, oh, it's God's will that this person abuse me. I would say that's misusing a spiritual teaching. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. For a long time, I did that. I misused spiritual teachings and I kind of dissociated from life. And it's also very near and dear to my heart because I was somewhat mistaught some aspects of Bruno's teachings, that whenever there's a negative feeling, give it away. Whenever there's a negative situation, put it in Bruno's hands and don't think about it. And I think that's half of the truth. And the other half is to seek discernment. Okay, what would you have me do here, God? Bruno, please help me to know God's will in this situation. And not to dwell, but to reflect and contemplate and learn from the challenges that come. So those are a few of my thoughts today as I'm facing challenges, the need for discernment, to not misuse spiritual teachings as a way to that can sort of dissociate us from reality, but can dissociate us from common sense, much less dissociate us from God. It gets very tricky because it can feel spiritual, like, okay, someone's doing, okay, I'll just give an example from my personal life. So I set a very clear boundary with someone and they broke it. And so I can just say, okay, well, this is God's will. And just ignore the fact that they crossed a line, or I can use it as a learning opportunity and say, okay, this person doing this is a gift from God, and how would God have me respond? What's the wise response? And in the first instant, I kind of like dissociate. And it's not like I'm not there. I'm not really listening to God. In the second instance, I take a spiritual teaching and then I live it. And then I seek discernment. And it feels so much better. Now, I'll be honest, dissociating is easier in the short term. Just kind of checking out, like, give it away, don't think about it. That's easier in the short term, but it doesn't really work. And it also goes contrary to the purpose of life, which Bruno Groening said, this life is a school. The lessons are not always easy. It's not comfortable for me to set and hold boundaries. It's not comfortable for me to say to someone, hey, what you did didn't feel good. There are other people who say such things too often and too much, and they need to learn to chill out a little bit. I need to learn to be a little more fiery, a little more firm. Some people are too firm and they need to relax, learn to relax a little bit. Maybe I can hang out with those people. I can help them relax a little bit. They can help me to fire up and get a little more firm. So thank you so very much for spending some time listening to this. This topic is very near and dear to my heart because I got in a lot of trouble misusing spiritual teachings and even Bruno's teachings. So I wish everyone a blessed day of reflecting, contemplating, and hopefully sitting with the idea that these different challenges and bumps, little and big, are connected to God's plan and part of our learning. That paradigm for me of holding everything that happens as part of my school is becoming profoundly, and everything is an opportunity for spiritual growth. It's helping life. It's helping me not be resentful when the bumps happen and the negative things happen. And it's really starting to help me have a vision of life as a fluid movement where God's hand is involved in everything. Thank you so very much. I wish you a blessed day. Take care.